Hello and welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint Podcast, episode 92. As usual, we've got a bunch of amazing... In fact, this week we've got some especially good comments and emails from you guys. And, of course, I'm going to start with the grammar point. And today's grammar point is all about 转折, or changing of the turn of events. Essentially, we're just going to talk about the word but, B-U-T in Chinese. And there's 4 different ways of saying but that we're going to talk about today. Starting with 不过. So let's check out this first sentence here. 我儿子没有手机，不过我有手机. My son doesn't have a phone, but I do. So 不过 is usually used in positive situations. It's also the most, let's say, the softest way of saying but as well. So it can also be used in neutral situations, but if it's especially soft or benign sort of change of events that you're talking about, you can use 不过 as well. But it's usually used in positive circumstances. So let's look at sentence 2 and also check out another way of saying but. 我吃了，但是可是我的儿子还没吃. So this sentence has a bunch of cool stuff in it. And it just goes to show you that even though this sentence is designed from level 14 to help you learn the word 但是, or at least that's what we're doing in this circumstance, it contains a bunch of other grammar points that you're also learning, or maybe you haven't come across yet, but it will also help you solidifying them if you listen to and read this sentence and even shadow it, as in speak it at the same time. So for example, we have 我吃了, I've eaten, or I have eaten that le, you're practicing that. It signifies a change or completion. 但是, of course, and 可是 means but. 我的儿子还没吃. So you've got the example of 还没, still have not, which could also be 还没有, but it's often shortened to be more colloquial. So 还没吃, just to make it more natural. So anyway, 但是 or 可是, I want you to remember that these 2 ways of saying but are essentially interchangeable. You can use them anytime you like. But there are some subtle differences. So 但是 is slightly more formal, and it also has more of a connotation of a more abrupt or jarring turn of events. So I ate, but my son hasn't eaten. It's a bit more serious, I guess you could say, from the speaker's perspective than, oh, I've got a phone. So there's that example. Also, yeah, but that's it really. So 可是 and 但是, just see them as the same, except you might want to say 但是 for when it's a bit more serious. I also hear Chinese people say 但是呢, sort of like as a break in what they're saying, just to extra emphasize the however or but turn of events that they're talking about. So let's look at sentence 3 here. Again, we're talking about someone's兒子, someone's son. 我有2个兒子, 可是 or 但是没有女儿. So again, we're negative. So the last sentence was also negative. 我儿子没吃, 还没吃, so it's negative. And this is also negative. So for both of these sentences, sentence 2 and 3, we would not use 不过, because that's only for positive, right? So let's look at sentence 4. 我住在东边, 不过我在西边工作. So this one we're using 不过 for the fact that this person works in the West. So what about sentence 5 here? Sentence 5 is introducing one last but here, which is 但, not 但是, just 但 by itself. So let's have a look. 我只有一只大狗, 但有2只小猫. 我只有一只大狗, 但有2只小猫. So I've only got one big dog, but I have 2 small kittens. So this 但 is, out of all of the ones we've spoken about so far, is the most formal. You'll usually see it in written examples. And if you use it in speech, it's not like it might sound a little bit strange if you're talking just with friends or just in a very casual environment, but you can use it in, say, speeches or just more formal situations. Or if you're talking to someone with a bit of status and you want to sound posh, you can go ahead and use it. But that's it. That's the only difference, really. So these different ways of saying but, we've got 但是, 但, 可是, and 不过. They should be all you'll need, really, to get this meaning across. And if you keep reading the sentences that come up in the course, if you are on the course, then you will eventually acquire them, and you'll eventually know exactly when to use it just instinctively. Okay, so I think 但是可是 and 不过 are all you'll really need to get by and to use but in all these different contexts. So if you go through the course, the Mandarin Blueprint Method, you start reading the sentences, you can also search for the grammar tag, which is coming up on screen right now. And you can get all of the flashcards in one go that relate to this particular grammar point, this 转折, this turn of events. And you can review them individually if you like. I hope that helped you guys, and that should be all you'll need for now for mastering this grammar concept. So let's move on. Now, like I said, we had some great comments and emails from you guys this week, so let's jump in. The first one I wanted to read was a really nice email from Christine Anderson, and she just sent us in essentially a review of the course so far, but it's not just a way of us patting ourselves on the back. I think that she has a very interesting, unique perspective that I think a lot of you would benefit from, whether you're on the course or not. So without further ado, let's have a look. To be honest, learning Chinese has never been an item on my bucket list. If I'd been planning to learn a new language, it would make a lot more sense to learn something like Dutch or German. My home language is Afrikaans, the youngest language in the world, which originated from Dutch and other influences about 150 years ago. I can already read and understand most of Dutch and German, yet here I am, studying Chinese, one of the most difficult languages in the world for Westerners. I blame COVID personally. When the lockdown happened, my mental state was such that I could not summon enough energy to spend on my normal hobbies such as reading or sewing. I was also working full-time from home, which was totally exhausting. I looked for something that would take my mind off things and that I could immerse myself in without having to invest a lot of emotional energy. Somehow I fell into the rabbit hole of Chinese fantasy costume TV dramas. After watching a few episodes of the first one, I was hooked. They were perfect for my state of mind, funny, over the top, dramatic, without asking me to angst too much over what will happen. I'm perfectly happy to read English subtitles, but slowly became intrigued by the language. How can this even be a language? It all sounds the same. Well, there are only 1,200 syllables, so if you count tones, only 400 or so if you don't. Then, as these things happen these days, advertisements for Mandarin courses started to pop up in my social media. Maybe I should just do a short course on pronunciation? That's where it all started. Suddenly I found myself signing up for the foundation course, and here I am today, being able to read short sentences in Chinese. My name is bread, for example. Yeah, in the early days of the course, we have limited... you only have a limited characters, maybe 50 or 60 characters and a similar amount of words. But we want you reading Chinese sentences without any help from Pinyin or English as early as possible. So we would sometimes piece together based on the small vocabulary we had. And names are quite rare characters, so they wouldn't pop up yet. So we had my name is bread as one of the sentences early on, but they get really normal really quick, don't worry. And plus, that is actually a cultural insight, because if you ever come to China, start talking to Chinese people, the English names they sometimes choose for themselves are a bit... Well, let's put it this way. As an English teacher before, I came across people called Seven. Seven's a really popular name, just the number 7. Cabbage was one, chocolate, milkshake, crystal with a K, all this sort of stuff. So, we quickly migrated from there to my phone is slow. That's a bit better. I still can't understand anything anyone says in the Chinese dramas, but boy, am I excited when I watch one where there are dual subtitles in both Chinese and English, and I can suddenly recognize a character and realize that they said something that I actually know. My goal is to one day be able to watch Chinese dramas and be able to at least understand some of what they are saying without being dependent on subtitles. But I'm also getting excited by the other possibilities that exist in being able to speak Chinese. I emigrated to New Zealand about 2 years ago. There's a huge business presence here in New Zealand, and I've come to the realization that if I can learn Chinese, I'll be able to tap into a huge potential market for work or business. Absolutely. Apart from that, learning Chinese in the past couple of weeks has really taken my mind off things and enabled me to immerse myself into something that is so totally different from what I'm used to that I feel I had been transported into a totally different dimension. Wow. The way that the course is constructed and presented makes you feel as if you are playing a game or putting together a puzzle. It is exciting every day to learn new characters and to review the characters and words that you have learned over the past few days to see if you can still remember them. Was it Lady Di or Marilyn Monroe who entered the bathroom of my grandmother's house and pushed the hook in her hand through the floating sun-shaped balloon into an electrical socket, causing her hair to frizz and her body to jerk around from the shock. Maybe I shouldn't have chosen such similar wishy-washy actors. Lesson learned. For those of you who aren't on the course, what she's describing is the Hansa movie method, the memory palace system that we teach you to learn characters. Very effective. What do I like about the course? I like the way the course is structured so that you work through levels. This gives one a real sense of achievement. Luke and Phil also constantly encourage and congratulate you on your progress, which really helps with motivation for continuing. Obviously, the Hansa movie method approach is a game changer. It makes it super easy to remember characters and words. I'd known about the memory palace concept before, but I've never tried to apply it myself. With Luke and Phil's guidance, it all just clicked together and is making so much sense. To learn a character, and this includes the meaning, tone, the stroke order, as well as the actual character itself, the meaning, is a matter of minutes. And you rarely forget a character once you've learnt it. I've mentioned before that Luke and Phil are super involved in the course. These guys go over and beyond what is required. They regularly interact with people going through the various stages by commenting on their comments. That's what we do here in the podcast. But what I also really appreciate is the other advice that comes with the course. They not only coach Chinese, but also give you advice on goal setting, dealing with slumps and setbacks, and just overall general advice on how to be successful in tackling something as new and daunting as learning this language. I also really appreciate the effort that was put into creating the Anke decks. I was also familiar with spaced repetition systems before, and have tried to create flashcards for my son for some subjects in primary school. I gave up after a few tries since it is just so much darn work to create the flashcards. Yeah, it's tough to do it on your own. I therefore really appreciate the amount of effort that went into creating those cards. I'm in the early stage of my journey. So far, I am amazed at the progress I've made. I'm amazed that the fact that I can read and understand simple sentences. I started the foundation course exactly 5 weeks ago today. Great. But I know there is still a long way to go. I try not to be too upset that I still cannot understand a single word of my Chinese dramas. No, I lie. I do catch a few words here and there. Yeah, maybe being a bit hard on yourself. And listening, by the way, is the hardest one. It's not the hardest. It's actually the easiest to learn. All you have to do is just listen in the background while doing other stuff. But it takes the longest. It takes the most amount of time, I think, to become proficient at, and it's a natural process that you can't rush. Really, you can just listen more. I know that Rome, not speaking of Beijing, is not built in a day. It's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication to reach the top of the mountain, but I'm convinced that if I just maintain my focus, learn a few new characters every day, and review my previous words and sentences, I will be able to achieve my ultimate goal one day in the future, to watch Nirvana in fire without subtitles. Thank you, Christine. That's our goal. Chinese is still huge regardless. There are tons of shortcuts, and we've done them all, I think. We've made it as short as we can, but I think the important thing that we give you is, we give you that knowledge and confidence that if I just keep putting in the time, it's going to be worth it. Because Phil and I have done, this has really stressed us out when we were trying to learn Chinese, and we'd invest like 50 hours of our time. I remember I'd invest like many, many hours of my own time into something that looked good, and I gambled, and then I lost, and this 50 hours was essentially a waste, or largely a waste, and it would just be so frustrating. And it's like, okay, well, am I just rubbish at languages, So we tried to remove that, so I'm glad you saw that. Thanks to Luke and Phil for such an outstanding course. If you ever doubt whether it's worth it and worth the money, I don't doubt it. Don't doubt it, it is worth it. Even if you just spend a few weeks with it, learning a new skill such as memory palaces and learning to use spaced repetition systems, it is already worth it. But the satisfaction that comes from looking at Chinese characters and realizing that you can actually understand what they're trying to depict is really priceless. Thank you so much, Christine, for the wonderful words. Really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to hearing how you do in another few weeks or months. Okay, the next one here is from Julianne McClay on one of the bonus videos, all about time, investing the right amount of time, which is absolutely essential. It's kind of what I was saying about Christine. It's like we've laid out the language as clearly as we think is possible. Obviously, there's still room for improvement, but essentially, it's the steps are there, but you still have to put in the time. And we recommend at least an hour a day. It can be broken up, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes, 20 minutes there, but you need an hour a day really if you want to see solid progress. 30 minutes is also fine, but if you want to see breakthroughs every few months, wow, you want to have those wow moments where you're achieving a big milestone in the language every few weeks or months, you need to put in that time, But the time you put in will be worth it, 100%. So Julianne says, thank you guys for this course. That's the pronunciation course. It has been great so far. I like to finish every few lessons with watching Happy Chinese on YouTube. It's a show in Chinese, and I love noticing new things the better I get. I'm starting to hear the ma's when there's a question or when they use the bu or the le. It feels like a little reward going through the course. Yes, and if you listen as early as possible, guys, and it goes for everyone here, whether you're on the course or not, whether you're a beginner or more advanced, you should be listening to Chinese all the time if you want to improve steadily, you know. I guess I'm more advanced. I'm not like, you know, I'm no Dashan, but it's like, so I don't put in as much listening practice as I used to. But when I was in like a beginner, intermediate, upper intermediate or whatever, I was listening to stuff constantly. As long as it didn't avoid my other half, annoy my other half too much, or I was being rude or anything like that, I always had earphones in my ears listening to stuff, you know. And Julianne's got a good idea. Yeah, Happy Chinese is a cool little show, actually. I think it was directed at learners of Chinese, but it's you know, real actors, real TV show. So check it out. Matt Schubert on again. You did it. So this is the final lesson of the pronunciation mastery course. Just saying, well done, guys. You made it to the end, and you're now on your way to mastering pronunciation. Well done. He says, just finished the PM course, and I feel I need to express my gratitude for this great thing you guys have built. My Mandarin journey began over a year ago, but was incredibly scattershot and inconsistent, with little overall progress. Worse, I had adopted so many poor pronunciation practices. My girlfriend tried to help, but it's mostly consisted of her saying, no, it's ch, not chi. But honestly, it wasn't until learning from fellow 外国人, that's me and Phil, means foreigners, that all of the tones, initials, and finals finally made sense. She told me that my pronunciation of the last 2 weeks is like night and day. Oh, that's music to my ears. You guys just get how to teach this language for non-Chinese adults. Well, that's us after all. We are that. So that's probably why we get it, right? Because we're talking to ourselves, essentially. I'm so incredibly excited to move on to the Mandarin Blueprint course proper and build up my Mandarin skills the right way, right after I zero out these pronunciation decks. Cheers, Luke and Phil. Thanks, Matt. Awesome comment. Thank you very much. And also, it seems like you got the right idea about you're taking Anke deck seriously. That is going to be even more vital once you move on to the rest of the course. Not only do you get more flashcards, but also they are more important, really. More essential because you're learning essential aspects of the language. Whereas the pronunciation decks are more like I see them as more like bonuses, and just to have some audio to practice the sounds and stuff. It's not necessarily need to be taken as seriously, but I'm glad that you have that attitude about them right now, because it's going to come in handy. This next one's from Dawn Shannon on You Did It. It's the end of it's the same lesson. She says, this pronunciation course is invaluable. Anyone who is considering learning Mandarin Chinese should take this course. For me, it removed the negative thinking. For example, I will never be able to learn this language. Am I just stupid when it comes to Mandarin? That thinking is now in the past. Whatever I consider to be an asset, what I consider to be an asset is Luke and Phil, whose mother tongue is English, who overcame the hurdles and the troubles and the frustrations of learning Mandarin Chinese. They were able to succeed. So yes, I can learn Mandarin. I have the roadmap. And again, it's that idea of I'm so glad that we managed to get that through to you, Dawn. That's amazing. Chinese is not it's not the impossible language that only Chinese people can learn because it's something in their DNA says that only they can learn it. Utter nonsense. It can be done if it's done the right way, right? That's fantastic. Matt on SRS. So this comment was really nice. I really appreciate this from Matt because Anke is the flashcard software that we use with the course and it's the best software out there for SRS. But it's a bit of a learning curve and it's not so user friendly and all that. But once you get past that, you get past the learning curve. It's amazing. So we're used to negative comments about Anke. We're not used to positive. So this is nice. So let's have a look. I see a lot of people dunking on Anke in various comments. Even Luke and Phil often seem apologetic about the fact that they chose to use it for the course. But honestly, after the initial growing pains, I love it. It's got a steeper learning curve and a total lack of aesthetic quality. But in return, it has full-featured and easy-to-use card customization, near perfect cross-device syncing. Seriously, I'm amazed that I can jump from my home desktop to my work, to my Android phone, even within the same study session, and it all works just seamlessly. a study algorithm that you can either just take as is and it works great for retention, or you can edit to the finest detail. And then finally, no cost, unless you get it on iPhone and iPad. But yeah, it's free for everything else. The above, coupled with the fact that the guys provide all the decks to make this method work, that's all we can really ask for. Thank you very much for that. It's much needed. This next one is from Kate Gans, and she asked a very interesting question, which is, when do you use 生活 instead of 住? Are they interchangeable? And the answer is no. So the difference between the two is quite big. They're not interchangeable at all. 住 means to reside. That's what you would say. If you want to say, I live at this specific place, in this country, on this street, I live with my mother, like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about reside? Then that is 住. That's what you would use it for. That's very specific. Whereas 生活 is very broad. It has a lot of different meanings and it's rather general in scope. So, for example, if you look it up in Pleco, you'll see several definitions for it. It could be life in general. So, for example, 提高生活质量. So, raise your life quality. It could also be a verb, which means to live. So, 他从小和他妈妈一起生活. So, since he was little, he's lived with his mum. But it's live, it's more, 生活 is more like 过日子. It's more like living life, like passing the days of his life, as opposed to residing, in that specific sense. And then you have the much less common meaning, which is survive. So 没有水，人就不能生活. So without water, people just cannot survive. They cannot live. Yeah. So keep look at some more example sentences, and you'll sort of click with it a little bit more. Great. So the next one we have is from Alex Sumray on. It's one of the longer form pieces of content that we have, and he's got an interesting question. He says, "Hi there, really struggling to understand this sentence. 每天中午差不多12点. So every day at noon, roughly at 12 o'clock. So he says, not sure I'm missing something here, but I don't see why the sentence couldn't just be 每天中午 at noon, or just 每天差不多12点, roughly at 12. Why do we say 中午, which means noon, and then also 12? Isn't that superfluous? That's what he means. And the answer is, 中午 to Chinese people is more like lunchtime. It's more like that period, I guess, between 11 and 1 o'clock. 中午. So it's a chunk of the day. So it's absolutely fine to specify 12. Now, in the future, if you want to specify 12, just say the time. Or say both. Say 中午差不多12点, just to make 100% sure. So it's just a way of the way the Chinese think about it. The next one here is from Gregory Patarao. So the next one here is from Gregory on new vocabulary unlocked for 银行, which means bank. And he's not understanding, or he's not quite sure about one of the example sentences we provide. So he says, I'm not sure about if I understand the use of 没 in this sentence. 街道的银行关门没? So are the banks on this road closed? Shouldn't we say 嘛 instead? We could say both. So 没 is short for 没有, right? And that's another way you could say it. So you could say 关门没有. So are they closed? Or you can 关门没, which is even more cool and colloquial. Okay, so 嘛 is absolutely fine too. But I would say if you said 没, that would sound the most local. That would sound the most 地道. It's just a very casual, cool way of saying it. Okay, so remember that for the future and try it out. All right, so that's all the emails and comments that we've had this week. Let's move on to some movies. And as usual, we've had a bunch of cool ones from you this week. Let's start with Dan Helsloot. He says, this is for the movie, for the character Wong, for King. In the kitchen of my ANG set, Wreck-It Ralph places a crown of razor blades on a bag of soil. He gets on one knee and proclaims, "All hail the king of the earth." Okay, so very straightforward. So the character means king, and he's tweaked one of the props to sort of look like a crown. So that's an interesting thing to do. I like that. As long as, I don't think you have to have multiple blades. Just maybe bend one slightly and put on just so it's clear it's still that prop. But still, it's really imaginative and I like it. So that will work very well. Thank you. Della on Make a Movie for Nian. So this is a rather rare character, but we still need to learn it because it's a Chinese character, and it's more importantly, it's used as a component in many other characters, more common characters. So Della says, this means, nian means 20, by the way. Okay. She says, my friend Nancy is sitting in my sister's backyard, the AN location, and is so excited because she has been studiously studying Mandarin Blueprint for 20 weeks and is now halfway through the course. She wants to commemorate this occasion somehow. On the table beside her, she sees 2 wooden crosses. Her face lights up with a great idea. She walks over to the garden with 2 crosses and sticks them both in the dirt. They look great for a moment, but then they keep falling sideways. She pulls her trusty razor blade out of her pocket and sticks it into the bottoms of both of the crosses to keep them upright. They look fantastic, and they signify 20 perfectly. So I'd say the only thing that's missing from this scene is a strong keyword representation. So the 20 weeks is very general, and it's not that visual. I really appreciate the plug for the course though, but we need to think of an example of 20. What comes in 20s? I can't actually think of anything off the top of my head, but you can do a Google search and look at the images that pop up and think what images relate to maybe it's a $20 bill, a £20 note. I think that's the one with Charles Darwin on it in England, English money. So I can imagine that fairly, it's like purpley in colour. So I can imagine that quite clear. If you're Australian, you can imagine the $20 Australian note. You get the idea. Money seems to be quite a good one for that. But you get the idea, Della. I really like the subtle, simple nature of the scene though. I just think you might forget the meaning. But do you know what? This meaning is so rare. It's not going to come up really in that. It's very rare to come up as itself, so it's not that important really. But still, we'd like to, tick all the boxes. So maybe imagine that a bit clearer. But I really like the fact that you haven't really done much in the scene, but it's still very memorable. It's just like tweaking the position of something. You've used the props in a very imaginative way. So that's very good. Thank you very much. So the next one here is from Al. Make a movie for zhi. So this one means govern, and Al's got this new thing where he's actually practicing his writing, which is I recommend you all do, even if it's only one sentence every day. Just write something, make a sentence up. And he's actually, as a way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, he's describing his movie scenes using written Chinese. So let's see what he does. Jet Li wants to govern the backyard movie set. 所以他在台上站，喝一杯水. So that's actually really good. It's just that you've put 站, the word stand, in the wrong place. So 所以他站在台上. So therefore he stands on the stage, 喝一杯水, and drinks a glass of water, which is describing the scene. Okay. I'm not sure how he's governing as well. You didn't describe that. But I imagine he's just looking like a leader and telling everyone what to do, or maybe some extras in the background. But either way, I really like this idea, Al. And I recommend other people do this, but also it's quite important, especially when you're writing, because you have so much time to write, unlimited technically. Go and get it corrected before you, just to make sure that you don't try to minimize your mistakes. And if you go onto a website which I love, which is an English learning website actually, but it's just the philosophy applies to any language, is antimoon.com. So ANTI moon.com. And there's a great article there about not making mistakes. And we're all going to make mistakes sometime, but just try your best to avoid it. And a good way of doing that is to ask like hinative.com. Go to hinative.com and maybe, give them your example sentence, have them to correct it, and then post it. Just to make sure that and then you're really acquiring that language. You're really you'll remember that as well. If people correct your written Chinese, you'll really remember it. It will really sink in. Either way, well done, Al. Keep it coming. And I encourage other people to do the same. Next is Dennis or Denise or Denis. I don't know. I'm not going to say if it's a man or woman because I've made that mistake in the past. It's like a French name. So this person, Denis, he says, she says, whatever. Make a movie for 冷, which is cold. And he says, a sergeant, and this is very good actually, very simple, which I like, but very effective. A sergeant is screaming at Leonardo DiCaprio, standing straight in the living room, putting icicles in his clothes and asking, "Are you cold?" "No, sir," answers shivering Leonardo. That's really good. So he's got the ice, and of course the right side component is ling, as in ming ling, as in order, to order you to do something. So that's what the sergeant is there for. He's that prop. Very clever. I really like that movie. Next, we've got two different stories for the same character. Two different scenes, rather. One is from Alex and one is from Della. So let's see how they compare, these different approaches. So Alex says, this is for hou, by the way. So hou means behind. So let's see how Alex does it. Leaving out some personal and perhaps overly gruesome elements in my story, it basically involves Harry Redknapp working the production line of an After Eights factory. Are After Eights a thing in other places than England? Yeah. They're like these chocolate square mints thing. They're chocolate with mint sort of cream inside. It's lovely. Anyway, he promises he'll get back to work after his break, but his boss ain't having any of it and comes back with his lightsaber, and yeah, I'll stop the scene there. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Looks like I think you've included all of them. But yeah, I trust that you have, all the props I mean. And it's a really straightforward idea. And I can imagine you'd have to use a bit of body gestures in there, like body language, but I'm sure you have. Next, we've got Della. Let's see how she handles behind this character. Heath Ledger is in the backyard of my OU location. He is standing in front of a conveyor belt, working hard, trimming vegetables with a razor blade, readying them for further processing. The Rolling Stones' mouth is being his annoying self, asking Heath for an autograph. Heath keeps saying, after my shift. And I can imagine, again, gestures are important because it's an abstract keyword, right? So after, maybe even pointing at his watch or whatever. But the mouth just won't stop shoving his autograph book and pen in Heath's face. Finally, Heath takes the razor blade and cuts both the autograph book and pen in half and throws it back at the mouth. There, I said after, and I mean after. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Well done for those. And the next one here, we've got another few scenes left. One is from Tyson for Make a Movie for Wan, which means 10,000. He says, I ended up making a scene with a saber-toothed cat after seeing that cat in an ad movie for the movie 10,000 BC and reading that they lived 10,000 years ago. I also found a song with Justin Bieber in it called 10,000 Hours. Maybe someone would find Justin Bieber helpful for this scene, or maybe both. Maybe we could combine them together somehow. Yeah, and do you know what? It's funny because I've seen that film, and I also I envision when I see a saber-toothed tiger, that also says 10,000 years BC to me too. So that's a great idea. Well done, Tyson. And this one, I'm a big fan of this next scene. Abigail for Make a Movie for zhù, which means pig. And she's got Jack Dawson is cast in a film which he needs to act like a pig. Mel Streep is trying to show him how. Bear Grylls comes along. He's the left side sort of, it's like a wild sort of animal component. He comes along and can clearly see neither has spent time with pigs. So he's like judging their pig impression. I like that, but for me, it's kind of lacking that Kodak moment of like, where's the pig? The keyword. And like you might look at the snapshot of like, Mel Streep on all fours with Jack Dawson. So you might actually need a real pig, or one of them turns into a pig or something like that. I don't know, but it's a good idea to have like the actual keyword as visual as you can, as direct in terms of its definition. But I still love it. I still love the story. Denis again. Make a movie for Chui, like to blow. And Chewbacca approached Jabba the Hutt, a lucky character and prop match. I love it when that happens. Outside my scene, they had an argument. Jabba called the Howler a flying mouth envelope from Harry Potter. I recently, funnily enough, I'm not even a massive Harry Potter fan, but me and my wife watched the first 3 of these like really recently, just rewatched them. So it's funny, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I definitely wouldn't have remembered a week ago. Which literally blew Chewbacca away. So this the mouth envelope, the Howler. So Ron Weasley was in trouble, and his mum sent him an envelope which is called a Howler, which tells him off. It ma's him really loudly. And great. And we've got the last one here, Tyson again, for make a movie for 且, which means moreover. It's more commonly in spoken speech combined with R to make 而且. And he says, shǒujī is resting in the bedroom of my E-set, and Mike Wazowski bursts into the room complaining that there are no razors in the house. Because he's not that attentive and also a little short, he doesn't see that the razors at his feet or the ones on the dresser above his head. Mike, there's more over your head and some at your feet. And moreover, you should knock before you enter this room. And that's very clever, but well done, Tyson, with the wordplay there. And, you know, I can imagine like putting up his hands and moreover, again, gestures are important with the abstract. But this is great scene. So thank you so much, guys, for the awesome emails and comments this week. As usual, extra good this week, I think. And of course, thank you again for all of your wonderful movie scenes. Please keep them coming. Respond in the community. If you have any issues, you have any things that you want to ask about your flashcards, about the course, you can email us, of course, at contact@mandarinblueprint.com, but it's often better idea to contact the community, send a post to the community, because, you know, we might be asleep or busy with other things and we can't quite answer as quick as everyone else. And there are a lot of helpful people there, and a lot of them are a lot smarter than us as well. So it might be best to do that. But either way, great chatting to you guys. I hope this was helpful today, and I will speak to you very soon. See you soon. Bye.